We are super excited to have the webinar today with a former senator and current executive director of the ACLU, Danielle Conrad. She knows the Nebraska legislative website very well. And we are excited to have her walk through the site with us and tell us a little bit more about the main page functionality, individual senator pages. She's going to walk through lobbyists, live streaming, appropriations, and bill tracker, and everything we want and need to know about how to use the website, which is a wonderful resource for all of our communications partners and nonprofit partners as well as the general public. A lot is available, and Danielle is going to walk us through that. So you should be able to now see her screen.
Well, again, thank you so much for the opportunity to join you all here today and to share a few tips and tricks with navigating the Nebraska legislature's website. I'll let you know that for those of you who are new to advocacy, this is definitely your one-stop shop to get all the information you need to effectively engage with elected officials in the Nebraska legislature and other key stakeholders. And for folks on the call who are a little bit more experienced or sophisticated with their advocacy, there's always a lot of new information and frequent updates to the Nebraska legislative website. So it's always good to just kind of take a moment and do a little refresher. And I'll also defer to your wise counsel and experience in navigating the website and walking through it as we go along. So we definitely encourage a collaborative dialogue today. So don't hesitate to ask questions as we're moving through things. And Joe and Cami will help me field those in real time, so that if something's confusing or unclear, we can just address it right then instead of holding things till the end. So I just wanted to give a few guideposts about some of the top features that we're going to be looking at together today. And of course, this is really just an introductory or cursory look at the Nebraska legislative website. So we definitely won't have an opportunity to cover all of the functionality and all of the substance on the website in just a half-an-hour call. But it should give you a good start so that you can go explore on your own, which is always great for the learning experience as well. So, okay, so we'll jump right into it. Here we're looking at the home page of the Nebraska legislative website. And again, this is really always going to be your touchstone. This is always going to be your home base to usually start your research and to go back if you get lost kind of as you're working through the different pages. And there's a lot to uncover here. But the nice thing about the home page is that I think the legislature information office and legislative staff is very thoughtful about trying to put the most timely and relevant information right up front to make the site really user-friendly for everybody. So the home page is where we're always going to come back to, and I want to draw your attention to the following features that we're going to spend a little bit of time today. If you look up here in the top right-hand corner underneath the legislative seal, you can see a little drop-down box that says Search Current Bills and Search Laws. So that's an area where we're going to spend quite a bit of time looking at how to research individual pieces of legislation. The other place that I want to make sure to spend some time with you today and to draw your attention to is right in the center of the home page, key scheduling functionality that is important for planning your work and strategies, from hearing schedules to interim hearing schedules to the overall legislative calendar, and taking a look at how to find the daily agenda, which you'd think would be really simple, but actually has a few tricks to it. And then I want to make sure to talk a little bit about the individual senators pages, which if you see here on the left-hand side underneath the State of Nebraska seal, there's a whole host of tabs here that help you to work through different important features from the legislature as a whole, bills and laws, the calendar functions, information about specific committees, legislative divisions and key staff members in the legislature, and then working down to the individual senators' web pages to help folks not only identify and locate their senators, but also to share a little bit of information about the treasure trove of good information and valuable information that's on individual senators' web pages. And then the other three pieces that I wanted to let you know about, also here still on the left-hand side, is a place for lobbyists. And of course, those of you who are already registered lobbyists are pretty familiar with this, but for new folks, I wanted to walk you through a little bit about how to use the lobby list, identify where you submit your reports, and then talk about how research in that regard can also be helpful to informing your strategy. And then finally wanted to encourage people to really take a hard look at the fantastic information that the unicameral information office puts out on a daily basis, sometimes even more so, and then also publishing of the unicameral update and encouraging everybody to get familiar with that as a news source and to sign up for those free resources, which really help to take your work to the next level and really give you that insider update about the inner workings of the legislature and really what's going on beyond the headlines in the major newspapers. The last piece that I wanted to make sure to highlight for everybody, moving back over here to the right side of your screen on the home page, is the live streaming function through Nebraska Educational Television, which allows you to monitor floor debate and committee hearings and occasionally some other things like special media events in real time, either on your phone or on your desktop, which is invaluable to monitoring things and engaging in the process. And then if we have a little bit of time, I wanted to make sure to give people at least a heads up about resources surrounding the state budget and the appropriations process, which is a bit separate and distinct from some of the other legislative work. So that's a quick overview. We have a lot of ground to cover, but I think one thing that I wanted to let people know is that not only is this the one-stop shop for lobbyists and advocates and community leaders and citizens, but the Nebraska Legislative website is also the one-stop shop for Nebraska's top lobbyists, for Nebraska elected officials. And I know that even when I was in the legislature, this website was just a treasure trove of information that I relied upon to do my work on a daily basis because it's so frequently updated and so accurate and comprehensive. So this is really where it's at. So to start off with, I thought maybe we could just kind of walk through how to search for a legislative bill, because this is going to be something that is going to definitely be a big part of your work. So again, if you go over here to the right-hand side, there's a host of kind of quick links or hot links to some of these most frequently used features. So searching the legislative, the current bills for the legislature is pretty straightforward, but there are a few tricks. So one thing that you'll want to recognize is here on the left side of this tab, it lists LB for legislative bill, and there is a drop-down box for LR for legislative resolution. Now, legislative resolution, of course, could cover basic things like congratulating the Cub Scouts back home, or it might encompass something broader even, like a proposed constitutional amendment or a legislative resolution designating an interim study. So if you ever get stuck with searching or a little frustrated, usually what's the culprit is that you've either selected LB or LR when you were looking for one of the other, and so that's someplace that you'll just want to be thoughtful about when you're typing in the bill that you're looking for. I'm going to go ahead and then just type in, and I probably should have tested this out, but let's just put in LB 100 for the sake of example here. And you can see that, okay, well, this is a piece of legislation that Senator Stinner introduced in the last legislative session related to firearms and the intersections for potential restrictions for those who have related disabilities under the Nebraska Mental Health Commitment Act. So that's a very interesting bill that I wasn't expecting to use for an example. But you can see then by just typing in the bill number, if you know it, LB100, that's the fastest way to get to the legislative history on the particular bill that you're looking at. And that's going to bring up all of your key information. This is your Cliff Notes. This is your thumbnail sketch that's going to give you everything you need to stay on top of this bill. If you look right here underneath the bill number and the short title, you'll see who the introducer is, Senator Stinner. You can click through that to go to his individual senator page to learn more. You can see when the bill came in. You can move to the center and click a copy of the actual bill that was introduced and scroll through that to read it. Of course, the underlined text in the legislative bill is new information, and the text with strike through is proposed deleted information. And then if you just work backwards, you can go to that main page on the bill, and you can see on kind of the center of the screen here is an actual real-time legislative history from the date of introduction to the committee the committee of jurisdiction the bill was referred to, the public hearing date being published, and then when it was moved to general file. So this is frequently updated and will have all the twists and turns for individual pieces of legislation. And the sorry, hello? Can you hear me? I'm sorry, was there a question?
Does someone have a question?
I think someone's phone is not on mute.
Oh,
okay.
No
Folks
worries.
can put their phone on mute. *6.
Just didn't want to miss it. And then, okay, so you can see here the legislative history that's listed by date to follow the progression of the individual piece of legislation. And it seems that the Nebraska legislature, and particularly on the legislative website, is getting better and better every session at also really grabbing some of the hard-to-find details as we get further into a legislative session when bills and amendments kind of start coming together and individual pieces of legislation start getting amended to other bills or to committee bills or put into packages. And it used to be a lot harder to kind of track that activity on the website, but now it actually happens pretty seamlessly and pretty clearly in real time. So even if Legislative Bill 100, which for example we have up today, were to be amended into another bill, you're going to be able to see that here, and it's going to track it in real time for you. So the other pieces that are critical to know about an individual piece of legislation, once a bill comes out of the Committee of Jurisdiction and is subject to floor debate through general file, select file, and final reading, most senators who aren't on that Committee of Jurisdiction, this is going to be the first time that they've really had a chance to look at or think about these bills that are now before them on general file. And I can tell you that many of my colleagues, when I was in the legislature, and I myself, in starting that general file debate, would say, okay, let's go and look at the Cliff Notes version here as I look at the agenda for the next day and to get a sense about what's going to be before us. And okay, I've read a copy of the bill. I have an understanding about what the senator's trying to do, but just in case, let's get some additional context. And I'd click over here on the right-hand side under Additional Info, and I'd get the Statement of Intent, which each legislative bill has a little a preview or a little synopsis about what the legislation is meant to accomplish. That helps to kind of put things in context. If you click back there, another key piece that you're really going to want to make sure to take a peek at is the committee statement, because that's going to give you a great sense about how the vote was at the committee, how the bill came out of the committee, and it give you a little bit of an overview of who was supporting the legislation, who was opposing it, and whether or not there were any key committee amendments for you to take a look at. So you can see here as we've clicked through to look at this sample committee statement, it's got the vote results from committee. We have 7 senators voting in the affirmative. Senator Chambers was absent that day, so he does not have a vote on the record in this regard. And then you can see it wasn't a very, let's say, robust legislative hearing, at least from looking at the statement. Senator Sinner opened on the bill, and then there were 2 individuals representing different organizations that provided testimony, no opponents and no neutral testifiers, and then a little synopsis of a potential committee change. So that's really going to be your Cliff Notes and many senators' Cliff Notes as well to know what happened at the committee level. And then as the bill continues to move its way through the legislative process, another key piece that you're going to want to look at as you continue to scroll down the right side of the main page here is you're going to be able to click through and actually look at the actual transcripts from the legislative committee hearings and from floor debate, which can be invaluable to helping you understand the issues presented and questions or concerns at each stage of debate. So I'm going to go ahead and click through this here quickly just so that you can have a chance to see, okay, now we want to go and look at LB 100. This has all of the bills that were up in Legislative Judiciary Committee that day. You can see here on the top, 39, 81, 100, and 321 are all kind of guideposted for us. So then I would scroll down quickly. Sorry to give anybody motion sickness as I'm doing that quickly on my screen. But to look for, and the legislative transcribers do a great job. You can see these signposts all the way along. We're still in LB 39 here. And I want to look for LB 100. So you can go pretty quickly to sort through the bills that aren't that helpful to your research in that time. And I think you have it. We're pretty close. Okay, I may have went past it, but you get the idea there. Okay, so that's a really quick and fast overview of the legislative bill search function. I'm going to click back to my home page, which is at the top left screen here, and just wanted to also draw your attention to the fact that this legislative search function for individual pieces of legislation really only works for the bills that are pending in the present biennium. If you want to go back and look at legislation that was introduced in previous biennia, then you need to click underneath the function text, the box, the search function box for past legislation. And this is going to take you to a much more advanced search option to go back and look at legislation from previous sessions. This page will also be important and helpful to you if you don't, for example, know the legislative bill number that you're interested in learning more about. This gives you an opportunity to search by date of introduction, by the co-sponsors or sponsors of the measure. You can look at the committee it was referred to. That might be helpful. Or you can use at the very bottom here a search by keyword function to try and help you track down that piece of legislation that you're looking at. I'm going to pause there just real quickly before we move to some of the scheduling functions just to see if anybody had any questions about how to search for past legislation or pending legislation. Okay, hearing none, we'll move to the next function. So again, we're going to move back to the home page, and I wanted to highlight a few key scheduling functions that are really helpful to planning your work and planning your legislative strategies that are primarily present and frequently updated, again, right here on the home page. So the 3 features that I want to make sure to draw your attention to are a list of hearing schedules, and this is frequently updated and always on the top of the list on the home page. So if you click here on hearing schedules, you'll have an opportunity to see, now of course we're in the interim period, not in the regular legislative session, but you can look and see what committees have scheduled what legislative resolutions for interim hearings moving forward, and they're listed by committee and by date. So this is kind of a nice PDF version that you can take a peek at or that you can download and print to plan your work. And going back, you can also look at just what's going on in the legislature this week to get kind of a quick overview of what's happening right now. And you can look to next week to see that, okay, next week we have no hearings scheduled, so everybody gets a break, hopefully. And the other thing that you can do is you can also search by a range of dates, or you can go over here to the right-hand side and look at the legislative calendar. And the legislative calendar is a key piece of, a key function that you'll really want to familiarize yourself, because it sets not only the hearing dates, but it will also, once session gets started up, it'll start a legislative schedule in general for which days the legislature will be in session and which days the legislature will be in recess. Now that's critical not only for planning your work, but planning your requests for meetings with key stakeholders, or planning some of your activities outside of the legislative arena and trying to take care of other business perhaps on recess days. So, or if you're scheduling lunch and learns or legislative lobby days or things like that, you're really going to want to get a good handle on what's happening on the legislative calendar that day. And then the other piece that's important to know for scheduling, going back to the home page, and it's going to be a little bit difficult to see in real time right now during the interim period, but one thing that's important to remember and can be a little bit frustrating or confusing is that typically the legislature, the Speaker's office, doesn't set the legislative agenda for the next day until late afternoon, early evenings, and if it's a real busy day, sometimes later in the evening, until the day before the next legislative day. So we don't have an opportunity to know what's on the legislative agenda days and days in advance. And so you really have to keep an eagle eye on this home page here and looking through the agenda that's posted every night. And you can find it right here on the home page. You can't see it right now because there's no agendas, because of course we're in the interim during sine die. But that's something that can be a little bit tricky to locate and can be a little bit frustrating when you're trying to plan your work and don't have a great idea about exactly what's going to be up on the agenda for debate the next day. But it's definitely important that you understand about how the legislature schedules public hearings, because you don't get a do-over then. Each bill has a public hearing, but that is your one opportunity really to weigh in on the record. And so you want to get those calendared as quickly as possible. The good news is that legislative committees do a much better job of providing some advanced planning and notice and opportunity about upcoming hearing schedules, so you don't have that quick turnaround like you do on the daily floor debate. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick pause there to see if people had any questions about locating hearing dates, looking for recess dates, or understanding how to find the daily agenda. Okay.
Okay, we have a few more minutes with Danielle. Please raise your hand.
Oh my gosh, it's going so fast. Okay.
Keep going.
The other place that I want to make sure to draw your attention to, which is I think frequently overlooked by advocates, and actually is starting to be a much more helpful and interesting place to gather information to craft your strategies. If you go on the left-hand side and click on the Senators tab, you can go to a variety of different functions to either find your senator if you don't know who that is, to get more information about the Speaker's office directly, to learn more about what a senator does. But the real interesting piece, I think, is on the individual senator web pages. When I was in the legislature, I never provided very frequent updates on this page. I used my social media and other communications tools to communicate in real time. but it's becoming apparent that individual senators are actually starting to use this feature a little bit more to communicate with their constituents about what they think is important. So that in and of itself, I think, is really interesting to go take a peek at. When you're setting up a meeting with an individual legislator, take a moment to scroll through their individual web page here to learn a little bit more about the committees that they're on, to learn more about the bills that they've introduced, and just to see what they're highlighting from their point of view about what's happening in the district or the legislature. A lot of senators from Greater Nebraska publish a weekly column for their hometown newspapers or media sources, and they'll frequently post those on this website as well in press releases or listed in columns. And that's a wonderful treasure trove of information to learn more about how that individual senator is looking at issues before the legislature. So really take a moment to dig in, do your homework, and get a sense of what that senator is really focused on through what they're publishing on that website. You can also see which bills they have individually introduced. We have Senator Baker up as a test example here. But you can go through and you can say, you can click through to see exactly what he's introduced, the status of his bills at the present time. And, you know, I think that's always helpful as you prepare for individual meetings to know what your senator is interested in and taking a leadership role on, either in terms of pitching a bill idea to them or just being able to show that you're knowledgeable about what they're working on in the course of your conversations. You can also see which committees they serve on, more about their legislative district, and then just basic contact information. But as you can see here, Senator Baker actually has a pretty active page. There's still Nye the Science Guy. Who knew? So that's really fun to be able to see what he's doing there. And it's also great to take a peek at if you need to contact their staff, and then also to get an archive of what they were working on in previous years as well. It's really easy to click through those different archives that are listed there and learn more about how they think about and how they look at the legislation before them. So there's lots of variance with individual senators' web pages. It's really up to them what they choose to put up there and how they choose to talk about it and update it and how frequently, but it is a great site to learn more in crafting individual strategies. And then I know we're running really short on time, so I just want to quickly tick off a few other important resources for you to take a look at in your own time. Over here, again, we're starting back at the home page. This is the live stream through the NET logo where you can go and click through and watch committee hearings and legislative floor debate in real time. They also cover the governor's press conferences and Supreme Court hearings, but you can just click through that and have an opportunity to keep tabs on what's happening in legislative hearings and floor debate. The other piece I want to make sure to draw your attention to is right here, news from the unicameral update. The unicameral has a great information office that provides fantastic articles on the work of the legislature. They have an online version, and then they also have a hard copy version that you can sign up for to receive in the mail. And you can subscribe to email updates or the hard copy, and that is just wonderful frontline information from people, objective information about what the legislature is working on. And it's always something that legislators themselves read, and so it's a good source of information that's free and available to you to enhance your work. The last piece I just want to make sure to update here on the home page, scrolling down to the left for lobbyists. So this is a great opportunity for you to identify who else might be working on issues that you're working on, to look at the legislative lobby reports from the principal perspective or the lobbyist perspective. As you start to build coalitions and do outreach, it's also where you'll submit your lobbyist registration forms and reports for legislative activity. And even though it's not always updated in real time, you will have an opportunity to go back through the session and see who's spending how much money on what bill. And that's always kind of interesting to informing your strategy and getting a better sense of what's happening in the legislature. So that's another piece that I just wanted to make sure to highlight for people. I don't know if we're going to have time to dig in a meaningful way to some of the special features surrounding appropriations and budget. But again, if you go back to your home page, the legislature does a great job of putting these key and most timely reports right up front in the center of the home page. And then there is, here on the left-hand side, there are special tabs that detail the budget process and that also give you a direct insight to, for example, to the Legislative Fiscal Office so that you can learn more about the budget process, what's happening in the interim, and take a peek at budget reports and the general fund status, which is a big piece of crafting revenue, tax, and budget policy. And one final feature I want to make sure to let you know, and then I really am done because I know we're over time, is take a look at this Legislator's Guide to State Agencies. Frequently, only senators from the Appropriations Committee use this in crafting their daily work, but this is a frequently overlooked, fantastic resource that everybody really needs to familiarize themselves with. It really gives you an incredible breadth of information about the different agencies in state government and how they're structured and what their budget looks like, their mission, their staffing plan, contacts. It's a free source. It's frequently updated. And it really helps to, I think, inform your work across the spectrum. So with that, I'm done. That's a lightning round tour of the Nebraska Legislature's incredible website, which is frequently updated, always evolving, but really a special and important resource for everybody in Nebraska and with business before the Nebraska Legislature.
Thank you, Danielle. We can't thank you enough for being such an awesome CSN member and for helping us understand a little bit about the legislature's website and the incredible resource that it is for Nebraskans. Thank you all for joining us. We want to just mention that next week we will continue our series at 11:30, same time, same day. On Tuesday, October 31st, we'll be looking at Bones and Bills, how a bill becomes a law. So this is a perfect segue to learning about the legislative website and then how a bill becomes a law, and hopefully we'll be able to show you something special with our animated video. Thank you again for joining us today. Thanks for sticking with us a few minutes over time, and we will see you all next week.